All right, y'all, this is going to be the last one. This is going to be AP Microeconomics free response question 1. This is kind of a long one, but it's not too bad. There's only 2 of these, so we'll do the first one today. And the purpose of these videos is just to help y'all, because of the coronavirus and everything, to help you guys kind of understand, because the College Board does provide you the answers with these questions, but I want to walk you through them and make sure that you understand. Also for the economics in general, both economics exams, there's often different answers that you can give, but I'm going to give the ones that I know best and the ones that I think don't, like, they're easier to understand, if you would. So the first question, in the early 20th century, limited transportation options and the lack of effective substitutes gave single cinema monopoly power in a small town. Assume that single cinema is a profit maximizing firm and currently operates at a negative economic profit in the short run. All right, so as you can see, we have a monopoly, right? So that's going to be different than we don't have a perfectly competitive market. So here is our quantity, and here is our price. So let's just draw a demand curve. And, well, there we go. And we know that for monopoly, we know that it is twice as steep as the demand curve, right? The monopoly's marginal revenue curve is going to be twice as steep as the demand curve. So if this is our demand curve here, this will be about our marginal revenue curve. And it doesn't have to be exact, but they just got to get the gist. So you want to make it significantly, marginal revenue, not significantly, like about twice as steep as the demand curve, right? So there you go. And we also are going to need to draw our marginal cost curve. Our marginal cost curve and our, what's it called? Our average total cost curve. So here's going to be our marginal cost, because marginal cost will rise. Marginal cost will rise with as quantity rises, because we have a decreasing or diminishing law of diminishing marginal product. So basically, each additional worker contributes less to contributes less to production. So your marginal cost, as you produce more and your marginal productivity of labor decreases, your marginal cost of producing is going to go up. And we're going to draw our average total cost curve. And we have to make sure that our marginal cost curve intersects our average total cost curve right at the minimum. This is because when marginal cost is below average total cost is falling. And then when marginal cost is above, as you can see here, average total cost, it's rising, right? This is because if you think about it like a GPA, like let's say here your average total cost is your GPA, right? And your marginal cost, these are the grades that you got for this last semester, right? So here's your grade that you got for last semester. Here's your average total cost. That new grade that you got was lower than your GPA. So it's going to bring your GPA down, 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 down until here your marginal cost or your semester GPA was above your total GPA. So now it's starting to rise because your better grades are bringing up your total grade point average, right? So there you go. So there we go. Here's our graph. And we want to find out the profit maximizing price and quantity of tickets labeled as PM and P and QM respectively. So here is where marginal revenue equals marginal cost, right? This is the profit maximizing. This is the profit maximizing quantity that firms will produce at monopoly firms. Any firm, but a monopoly firm can jack up the price, as we can see. But this is what the firm will produce at, because if they produce any less, they're not making as much as they could, because they could essentially be getting more revenue. And then if they increase, uh, because if you think about it, we think at the margin. So here, if they produced this much, marginal cost is what's called lower than marginal benefit, right? Or marginal revenue. So why wouldn't they just produce more and more and more and more? Because the benefits are more than the costs for all of this. Why would you not produce the maximum here that you can? Because now when they try and produce more and more and more and more here, you see marginal cost is above marginal benefit. So now it just gets more costly and more costly and more costly and more costly. So there's really no point in extending your production past this point. So that's exactly why we need to produce where marginal cost equals marginal benefit, right? And since it's a monopoly, we can jack up the price because we're not in a perfectly competitive market. And this is going to be this point on the demand curve where marginal cost equals marginal benefit. This is going to be our PM. And this is our QM down here. All right, and part 2, the area representing the negative economic profit shaded completely. All right. So let's see. Our profit is going to be, we'll say, oh my God, I wanted to make a different color. This is our profit, right? This box, this whole rectangle that we just outlined is our profit, right? Because it's the price at which we're selling our good multiplied by the quantity of goods that we're selling. So that's the profit. I can't find the damn mouse. The quantity that we're selling, right? So that's the definition of profit. But if we look at our average total cost curve, right, we can find the total cost of producing the quantity, right? Because average total cost times quantity gives you total cost. And this right here, this whole rectangle, that's negative profit, right? Because this whole length times this whole width, that's all our total cost, because our average total cost is above our price. And so our profit area, our profit rectangle has a smaller length. They both have the same base, but our profit rectangle has a smaller length. Our total cost rectangle has a longer length, and so our average our total cost area, basically our total cost, is going to be greater because it's a greater area. So this is our negative profit here, because this whole area is both cost and profit. So these cancel each other out, but this is just cost with no profit. So that's our negative earnings there. Part B, explain why single cinema continues to operate in the short run despite earning negative economic profit in the short run. Okay, so you can say a few different things for this question. I would personally say whenever a firm decides to operate in the short run, and they're making a negative profit, this is probably because the cost of renting their capital or their building, so their total fixed cost, right? The cost that they have to pay, it's not variable. They have to pay it. They have to pay it every month, and they can't stop paying it until the long run. So in the short run, even if you have this negative profit, if the profit you are making outsets the it's enough, if the profit you're making is enough to cover your rent bill, basically you're able to cover your total fixed costs, you're going to keep producing. If you can, in the short run, if you can cover your total fixed costs, you want to keep producing even though you have a negative profit, because you want to cover that difference, you want to ease the blow. But in the long run, they're going to shut down because they can cancel the lease. I hope that makes sense. Would single cinema's total revenue increase, decrease, or stay the same if it decides to sell one fewer ticket than QM? Okay, well, I guess the way to describe this, the way that's easiest to me to understand this, is that, as we can see, just judging from the demand curve, that this is well, also we're thinking here, right? Let's say we as it said, we're decreasing our QM to, oh, that is a disgusting line. We're decreasing our QM to here, QM prime, right? And we know that this sort of, here, let me put it in a different color. This portion of the demand curve is the elastic portion. So in the elastic portion, or whenever a demand curve is elastic, the quantity effect is greater than the price effect. So even though now at this quantity they can charge a higher price, the offset in the quantity is actually going to decrease their revenue because the quantity effect is more than the price effect when when you're facing the elastic part of the demand curve. Around, oh shit. If, let's say, if it was around here, this is the inelastic portion of the demand curve, so their revenue would increase, their profits would increase, total revenue slash profit would increase, because the price effect, when it's inelastic, the part of the demand curve, or any demand curve is inelastic, the price effect is going to offset the quantity effect. But here, the quantity effect outsets the price effect, so the decrease in quantity hurts profit more than the increase in price helps it. Single cinema hires workers in a perfectly competitive labor market with a downward sloping demand curve. Suppose the number of workers available in the market decreases. What will happen to the wage rate? All right, so let's do a new thing here. Let's look at the labor market for the whatever cinema it is. Supply and demand. Oh. Quantity and wage, because wage is the price of labor, right? So we'll put W here. And it says the number of workers available in the market decreases. So that's a supply shock, right? So we'll say this is supply. Ooh, let me use the straight line tool. This is our supply right here, right, of labor. And this is our demand for labor. And this is our initial equilibrium. This is our quantity of equilibrium. We'll put that Q star. And this is our equilibrium wage. Now there's a shock to the supply curve. which means it shifts to the left, right? Because the supply decreases. We'll put S, and this is S prime. So this is the new supply curve shifted out to the left. And this is our demand curve, which stays the same. Now this is our new equilibrium. The equilibrium quantity of workers demanded and supplied, Q prime starred, decreases, and our wage, to compensate for the drop in supply, rises, right? Because when your supply decreases, but your demand stays the same, there has to be a way to equilibrate supply with demand, and so the wage will get higher because firms will demand less workers at this wage because they don't want to pay as the higher the wage, the less workers demanded, right? So in order to get back to that equilibrium, we're going to have to raise the wage so firms aren't going to want to hire as many workers, and we get back to this equilibrium quantity of workers hired. All right, and my bad. What will happen to the marginal revenue product of the last worker hired? Explain. All right, well, because we can think of this in two ways. If we hold capital fixed, so we have all the same amount of machines, right? And we have more workers, right? We have, let's say it's a kitchen, and we have a set amount of machinery we can use in the kitchen. We have one worker in the kitchen doing everything. We add another worker. Oh, we can make more things because now we can specialize a little bit. A third worker, that's great. One can be on the grill, one can make the sandwiches, one can do the baking, one can package everything if there's four of them. So, they can specialize. But as we start adding more, we start adding and adding and adding and adding. We have 10 employees, 11 employees, 12 employees. Now we have to take turns on the machines because there's not enough room in the kitchen. There's not enough machines to go around. And the amount of output that we are adding to the process with every worker, there's less additional output. The output is still rising, but the rate at which it rises is diminishing, and this is called the diminishing product of labor. So when you have less workers, under this law of diminishing product of labor, when you decrease the quantity of workers you hire, the marginal product of each laborer increases, right? Under that law. And this also is in tandem with the fact that firms will hire with the marginal the marginal product of revenue, or let me look at the exact wording of it. To the marginal revenue product. Yeah, the marginal revenue product, basically, like, they will hire at the marginal revenue product. How many additional dollars is this worker earning the firm? They will hire where that is equal to the marginal product of labor. And so when the marginal product of labor increases, then so does the MRP, right? And we can see that this is also the case in that the wage increases, right? So if MRP is equal to MPL and the wage increases, because this is the amount that firms will pay. They will pay the amount of workers, the wage at which the MRP is equal to MPL, right? So if the wage goes up, that means both of these have to go up as well. So the MRP will increase because of, you can use the law of diminishing product of labor to explain why less workers will increase the marginal production of labor for the remaining workers. or you can say that because the wage increased and use this condition that MRP is equal to NPL, and that's the wage at which firms pay their workers, is where MRP is equal to NPL. When wage increases, then that means both MRP and NPL have to increase. And so that is the end of this one. Yep. So if you have any questions, let me know. Do not get involved in a triangle scheme, because what happens when somebody doesn't want to get to the middle? That's just stupid. Can you help me figure out why my ex left? I'm sorry, that is something you probably have to figure out for yourself. That's not my specialty. All right, adios.